Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on You're a Mobile Apps Developer and Didn't Know It. I am your presenter, Joe Crable. I am a Solutions Architect here at PTS, and I will be giving the demonstration today. All right, so what you're looking at here is our TracerPlus desktop software. Let me jump over to our session here. So maybe this one will be, we'll call this employee scan. And maybe we'll add a second session here called employee list. So this will hold our list of employees. Let me try to spell that right. So I'll have our employee ID, name, and then maybe we have an access. Maybe we'll call it status. And then we can remove any unnecessary fields. So then in this case, maybe we want, once again, we'll have an employee ID that you're going to scan. Going to look up their name, their status. Maybe we want to track what location they're at, and then a date time. And then we'll remove all the excess fields. All right, so the first thing we want to do is how do we set up these fields to actually look up the data from the employee list when we scan the employee ID? So that's going to use something we call lookups. And we want to set this up for the fields that we actually want to look up the data for. We don't want to set it up for the field we're searching on, but the actual fields we want to look up. So you'll see we have a Lookup Options tab. And if we click the Enable Lookups, we'll be able to choose a source session to pull the data from, as well as what we're basing this on, which is going to be our employee ID field. And then what field ultimately we want to return. We want to return the name field. Employees not found, we can put a not found message in here, or we could say employee doesn't exist. We can do the same for status. Employee list based on employee ID to look up the status. And then location, we can set this to be a drop-down to move throughout the different, we can add the different locations in a particular area. So we'll say maybe cafeteria, let's say shipping, reception, conference 1, conference 2, and so on. You can also sort these items and also restrict them so that they can only pick from the list. If restrict is not checked, that'll allow them to type the value in if it's not in the list already. And then the date time, we just want to capture the date and time from the device. So I'll just select a standard format here. We can make this read-only. We can also make name and status read-only. Since those are going to be looked up, we don't want users entering data there. If the employee doesn't exist, you may not want them to proceed. So the next thing we can do is control the flow of the application. So basically what happens once we scan an employee ID. So since it's going to look up the name and status, we want to direct focus right to the location field. And then maybe after we select the location, we want to auto-submit this record, which will submit it to the device, and then we'll return focus to the employee ID so you can scan the next employee. That pretty much takes care of the field settings. Now we want to design our form. So we can create a default form here. It'll create to the size that we have selected. I'm going to deploy this to an Android device so I can actually choose a different form size. So let's do, I'll do 800 by 1190, and if we hit apply, you'll see that it'll scale that form up for you automatically. So if I were to just deploy this form as is, I'll just show you what it would look like. All right, so this is my phone here connected through an app called Visor. That also allows me to remote control an Android device. It's a free tool through Chrome. So you'll see here's our employee scan and our employee list. If I click employee scan, you'll see that it looks exactly like what we have here. So what we want to do is we'll probably hide that tab, maybe add a little color to it, and align some of the fields a little bit more nicely. So if we jump back to our form, one thing we can do here, we have an option once you click on the tab control to hide the tab border. That'll hide the tab. We'll move that up a little bit. Our buttons, make them bold. Let's change their color. Let's go gray with a white text. Maybe our form background will be, let's go with a steel blue. We'll change our labels to match. And we'll change that font color to white. And maybe we want to make this font a little bigger. Make it 42. And then maybe we want to make it bold. Slide this over. And then let's align our fields here using our alignment tools. And we'll do the same for our labels. And you can highlight multiple controls by holding down Shift and clicking. Maybe we'll move this down. And now if we deploy this, we should see that the form is going to start looking a lot nicer. So it looks like we need to make our tab a little bit wider. What I like to do is just make the font a little smaller. We'll just make that out past the red line. The red border here is your form size. So anything beyond that won't display on the form. So maybe we want to move these fields closer. So one thing I can do, if I drag this field up, and I can highlight all of these, and click our spacing tool here that'll align, space them out vertically even. And let's just rearrange this. And we'll push that out. Sometimes the Samsung phones are a little finicky and will take a long time to deploy. Only seen that with Samsung phones. I'm not sure what's going on there, but we actually have a hidden feature. It's a remote deploy function. Not a lot of people know about it, but it enables you to deploy your forms remotely. So if your device is out in the field, instead of having to come to the PC connected via USB, you could actually deploy that form via the web. So I'll show you here. It's a little Easter egg. So if you go to the About screen and click the PTS logo 7 times, you'll see a new option here to download a project. You could actually generate a QR code when you're deploying the project so that the device can just scan the QR code and actually get the project. Or if you have the server info in here already, you just click the project that you want to download and then click download. So that's a nifty little feature. And the next thing we're going to add is the NFC capability. So like I said, NFC is near field communication, which enables you to utilize the NFC technology in Android devices currently. I don't believe Apple or iOS opens that up for regular use. So until they do, you'll only be able to do this on Android. All right, so this should be deployed now. Here's our form. Here's our drop-down. It should list our locations that I added there. I did spell cafeteria wrong. So the idea here is to scan the employee ID via NFC, which will then do a lookup of the name and the status. And then we'll select the location, which will submit that record and return us to the employee ID. So let me just clear out our data here. So I'll add a couple of employees. Let's say 1001. Say it's myself. Say A for active. Say this is John Smith. We'll say A for inactive. All right, so now let's add our NFC functionality. So if we jump over to Data Capture, you'll see that we have NFC enabled by default. So the one thing we want to do, so right now if I scan an NFC tag, it'll just scan into whatever field I'm focused into. So what we want to do is add a smart form rule, or basically a rule that allows you to direct this data to a specific field. So I can say on an NFC read complete, I want to place the data in the employee ID field. And then trigger after scan means it will trigger that scan function of doing a lookup of the name and the status. If we had that unchecked, it wouldn't trigger that lookup. That's really only used in RFID when you're doing mass scanning of assets into a cache grid, basically queuing up a bunch of scans to submit. So that's our NFC setup. We'll go ahead and push this out. So here's that keyboard I was talking about. It's a little bit annoying. We really wouldn't want it to pop up in this case. So I can actually jump to the form designer, and maybe we don't want it to ever display. So we'll say hide keyboard always. Probably want to do on focus for the location field. So we only want to show the keyboard if we physically click into that versus just clicking the drop down. All right, so now you'll see that the keyboard didn't pop up. So I'm going to scan an NFC tag here. There we go. So we scanned our John Smith badge. You'll see that it's a status of inactive. If I did select the location, that'll submit the record, and you'll see that it returns to the employee ID. Now if I scan another badge, now it looked up my name. I'm active. Let's say I'm in conference 1. So now maybe we want to do something with that active versus inactive. So that's where our logic can come into play here. If I click this ID, we'll be able to see all of our control IDs here. And maybe we want to add a rule that turns that status field red if it equals IA. So this is our logic. We want to add a new logic event. So we'll say on after scan, so that's where that trigger after scan comes into play. So after scan of employee ID, which is control 5. And then we want to say if status. So status, you'll see the field control is 9. So we'll add a condition. So if 9 is equal to IA, you want to set back color of control 9. And we'll set it to red. Else, we'll set it to white. Let's push this update out to my handheld. Oops, keep clicking the wrong device here. Okay, so now if I scan my badge, we should still be okay. If I scan the other badge, you'll see that since it's IA, the status field is red, and you'll notice that that should be pretty noticeable to the user that, hey, red flag, you're not allowed to proceed. You can even go further into displaying a message. Do the same thing after scan of 5. If control 9 equals IA, we can show a message. There it is, show a message. And we can basically say employee not authorized. I'll push that update. And if we click on employee scan, let's scan a badge. You'll see not only did it turn red, now we got our alert that employee is not authorized. You can even play a custom sound if you wanted to. Even further, make you aware that they wouldn't be authorized. You can also add validation to prevent this record from submitting. Even though it turns red and it shows a message, it still doesn't stop us from actually submitting the record. So what we can do now is add validation. So we'll add a field called authorized, and we'll have it a default value of A. Make it read-only, and we don't want it to clear on submit. And we can choose a validation of equals, so we can say that it must equal status. So the status looked up should be A, and if it matches this A, then it should allow the submit. If not, it will go ahead and not allow us to submit the record. And once again, we can say employee not authorized. And then we can return to the employee ID field. Okay, so if I scan the badge again, so employee not authorized. Now if I try to actually enter something and submit, you'll see that now we're getting a message, employee not authorized. So it's not going to allow us to do that submit. So it just returns us to the employee ID field. The record count didn't increase and allows us to scan a new employee. Now if I scan myself, select a different conference, you'll see that it allows the submit to take place. All right, so now that we have this data collected, maybe we want to sync it over to, maybe we'll just sync it over to an Excel sheet to keep it simple. So if you wanted to view the data, you could see it here. These are your employee scans and where they were. Oh, wrong button. So just click our home here. So that's where the TracerPlus Connect software is going to come in. So this is a software that's going to allow you to automatically sync the data to the destination of your preference. You can also sync data to the device, so essentially I could sync the list of employees from a database or Excel sheet to the device that have access, or if you decided to use a database and go real-time, you could actually get real-time updates of employee status. So if someone was, A at the beginning of the day, they could be changed to IA because maybe they got let go. That would update in real time, so the next time you scanned it would actually be seen on the scanner, and you would get the Not Authorized. I'm just going to create a new project here just to take the scans that we did. The first thing I want to do is create a sync profile. If you wanted to do the real-time mode, you would create a live profile. But I'm just going to do sync profile, and what we can do is associate our desktop project with this profile, which makes it a lot easier to configure. So our project name is Employee Access. So we're just going to connect it to that. If we wanted to, we could name the profile. We'll call it Sync From Device. And then a profile can exist of a single process or multiple processes. Basically a profile is something you trigger with a sync. So you can either sync one process or multiple processes in that profile. I'm just going to create the one. We'll call it Sync Employee Scans. And the next thing we need to do is set up a source of where the data is coming from, and then a destination of where it should be going to. So source, since we're syncing from the device, we're going to be syncing from TracerPlus. And you'll see, since we tied that project to it, we have our list of 2 sessions here. We want to sync the data from employee scan, and we want to choose a destination. So I'm just going to create an Excel file here. Just create a blank workbook. It'll be the employee ID, name, status, location, and date. And we'll just make these column headers. And I'll just save that. Save that to my desktop. We'll call it Employee Scans. And we'll just close the sheet. So now from our destination, we can choose Excel, click a folder to browse to that file. It's on our desktop, Employee Scans. And then we could actually choose the different sheets. So if you had a workbook with multiple sheets, you could choose which sheet to sync to. And in the advanced section, we could choose a start row. So since we have column headers, we don't want to start on row 1. We want to start on row 2. And then we have our mappings here. It's basically saying that employee ID is going to sync to column A, name to B, and so on. We don't need to sync the authorized validation, so we can just remove that from the mapping. And then we can choose how that data posts to the sheet, whether we're just going to keep adding, we're going to overwrite, or we're going to update based on some info. In this case, since these are transactions, we'll append, and then what you would want to do typically is remove the data after a successful sync. We'll just save this Connect project as Employee Scans. And we should be ready to go. The only thing we need to do is configure the device to actually connect to this PC. So the first thing we want to do is add a host. So that would be the IP of my PC. We're not doing live sessions, so we don't have to set up anything here. We're not doing any sync timers or sync conditions either. And then the last thing we want to do is set up a button to actually sync this data. So I can add it to this form here, or you can add a dedicated session just for syncing. But I will just click the button control and then click on the form, and that'll add a new control to the form. You'll see we have a couple different options here to add fields, labels, buttons, tabs, images, or grids, or even timers. We'll call this sync. Then we want to set it to an action of do sync, which is in here somewhere. And then we need to just tell this button what host is it syncing to and which profile is it syncing. So if we look at the host, it's host ID 1. And then if we look at connect, we'll see that this profile is profile ID 1. If you have multiple profiles, they would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, and you could choose which profile this button syncs. So this is going to be 1. And then we'll push this update. And we should have a sync button. I could have changed the color so that it doesn't blend in with the background here. But if we go back to connect and then synchronize, we should see some activity take place here once I click this button. All right, so it says it's synced the 4 records. If we open that sheet, there's our 4 records. There's our employee ID, name, status, location, and the date scanned. So that was about 20 minutes. I set up a simple employee tracking app to collect data via NFC and sync it back to an Excel worksheet. So you can see how easy it is to get up and running using our software, designing it, creating your own forms, and collecting your data. That's all I wanted to demonstrate today. I want to thank everyone for attending. So let me jump back to our PowerPoint here. We will start addressing questions now, but if you do happen to have questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to us through this info here, or you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, as well as view some of our videos on TracerPlus and check us out on LinkedIn.